Good morning, and welcome to worship with the Unitarian Universalist Church of Ventura. I'm Celia Ortenberg, and I am honored to serve this congregation as a worship associate. Our Reverend Dana Warsnop is away today, but we have Michael Esselun, one of our favorite speakers, to whom I'll introduce you in just a moment. Today, Neil Ortenberg will be sharing worship with me. Carolyn Bjerke is our music director, and of course we have many hands taking care of our technical needs. I'm so grateful for all who are participating in creating this service, and for all of you out in Zoom land for joining us this Sunday morning. Last Sunday, after church, many of us met with UUA Stewart consultant Kay Kreider to discuss the hopes and dreams of this church. And the ways to finance them. Today, after the service at 11:30, our fabulous, hardworking finance committee will present our mid-year budget review conversation. Once more, you're all invited. I'm so grateful for our finance committee, and I hope to see you all at the meeting. More about how to access that will be at the end of the service. Now, to introduce you to our speaker, Michael Eselun. Michael serves as a chaplain for the UCLA Center for Integrative Oncology. Two-time TEDx speaker, he speaks extensively to healthcare professionals, patient populations, and faith communities across the country. He's also worked as an activist educator addressing anti-LGBTQ bias in the larger community. He has 4 volumes of CDs available for purchase. Contact Michael through his website, www.michaelesselun.com. We're so glad to have you with us today, Michael. It has been a practice for this community to acknowledge the land that each of us are on is the ancestral home of indigenous peoples. In most of Ventura, this is the Chumash people. May we care for this land that is now sustaining us with gratitude and passion. And let us now all enter sacred space.
Good morning. We hope that everyone here has a chalice or a candle to light and something to light it with. We come together to light the chalice of our community, both in person and virtually, as a way of reminding ourselves of our common light, the spark within, the light we carry and the light we give away. May we fan the flame of spirit within ourselves and each other with encouragement, with compassion, and a willingness to be a witness, knowing that it is enough. It is more than enough. It is what we came for. Let's light our chalices all together.
Our call to worship this morning is by Mark Nepo, and it's called Behind the Thunder. I keep looking for one more teacher, only to find that fish learned from water and birds learned from sky. If you want to learn about the sea, it helps to be at sea. If you want to learn about compassion, it helps to be in love. If you want to learn about healing, it helps to know of suffering. The strong live in the storm without worshiping the storm.
Good morning. I'm Carolyn Bjerke, the music director. I'd like to welcome you and invite you all to join me in singing. Come, come, whoever you are. We will sing it 3 times. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again, come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again, come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again, come.
I don't know how many others of you have experienced this, but sometimes in church I feel as if the minister has just been sitting on my shoulder all week and has prepared the service pretty much with me in mind. I don't think I'm alone here, but that's how I felt when I watched the simple story for all ages that Michael suggested for this service. So let's watch it all together.
Ish by Peter H. Reynolds. Ish. Ramon loved to draw. Anytime, anything, anywhere. One day, Ramon was drawing a vase of flowers. His brother, Leon, leaned over his shoulder. Leon burst out laughing. "What is that?" he asked. Ramon could not even answer. He just crumpled up the drawing and threw it across the room. Leon's laughter haunted Ramon. He kept trying to make his drawings look right, but they never did. After many months and many crumpled sheets of paper, Ramon put his pencil down. "I'm done." Marisol, his sister, was watching him. "What do you want?" he snapped. "I was watching you draw," she said. Ramon sneered. "I'm not drawing. Go away." Marisol ran away, but not before picking up a crumpled sheet of paper. "Hey, come back here with that." Ramon raced after Marisol, up the hall and into her room. He was about to yell, but fell silent when he saw his sister's walls. He stared at the crumpled gallery. "This is one of my favorites," Marisol said, pointing. "That was supposed to be a vase of flowers," Ramon said, "but it doesn't look like one." "Well, it looks vase-ish," she exclaimed. "Vase-ish?" Ramon looked closer. Then he studied all the drawings on Marisol's walls and began to see them in a whole new way. "They do look ish," he said. Ramon felt light and energized. Thinking ishly allowed his ideas to flow freely. He began to draw what he felt, loose lines, quickly springing out, without worry. Ramon once again drew and drew the world around him. Making an ish drawing felt wonderful. He filled his journals. Tree-ish, house-ish, boat-ish, afternoon-ish, fish-ish, sun-ish. Ramon realized he could draw his ish fillings too. Peace-ish, silly-ish, excited-ish. His ish art inspired ish writing. He wasn't sure if he was writing poems, but he knew they were poem-ish. Ponder, pond, ponder, dream, wander. Pond, pond, yond, yond, gleam, wander, Ramon. One spring morning, Ramon had a wonderful feeling. It was a feeling that even Ish words and Ish drawings could not capture. He decided not to capture it. Instead, he simply savored it. And Ramon lived ishfully ever after. Ish.
The reason that I like this story so much is that it reminds me once again that with art, as with most aspects of life, the beauty is not in the perfection, but it is with the expression of the self, with being vulnerable and present, that brings out the true beauty of who we are. Thanks for the story, Michael.
Each Sunday, this congregation gives away our collection to an organization in the larger community or to funds that help people in our own church. We now invite you to donate online or by text. You'll see the link on the next slide along with the phone number of Text to Give. Both will also be posted in the chat. The links for the we're not doing that, are we? Let me see. Okay, our offering today goes to our own Inreach Outreach Fund, which allows us to help members of our congregation or to respond to a need in the community that can't be met in other ways. We recently used these funds to help keep a young family in their home in partnership with the Ventura Homeless Prevention Fund, Temple Beth Torah, and the River Community Church. The parents in this family of 5 were not able to pay the rent due to illness. Our support helped the mom, dad, and their 3 children to continue to sleep in their own nice warm beds. This fund makes such a difference in people's lives. Thanks for giving generously, as you always do.
Loosen, loosen, baby. You don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, let go. Loosen, loosen, baby. You don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, let go. Holy breath and holy name. Will you ease this pain? Holy breath and holy name. Will you ease this pain? Loosen, loosen, baby, and you don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go. Loosen, loosen, baby, and you don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go. Loosen, loosen, baby, and you don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go. Loosen, loosen, baby, and you don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go. Loosen, loosen, baby, and you don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go. The weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go. The weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go. The weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go.
We are grateful for the generosity of this congregation, which weaves a tapestry of love we call community.
Each week, we lift up the joys and sorrows that have been shared with this community. There are two ways to submit a joy or a sorrow from a link on the website, Ventura, uuventura.org, or a link in our Thursday email bulletin, UUCV This Week. When we are together in our physical sanctuary, we drop stones in water for each joy or sorrow. The ripples that go out remind us that we are all connected. Today in our online sanctuary, we see the image of the ripples to remind us of our connection with one another.
I now invite you to speak aloud or in your heart or write into the chat the names of those you wish to celebrate or memorialize, or those who may need the loving embrace of this community. By invoking their names, even when we may not hear them, you bring them into the circle of caring that we call community. We hold these names, spoken and unspoken, in the silent sanctuary of our hearts. May we be truly grateful for all that is our life.
Please join me in singing Spirit of Life, first in English and then in Spanish. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. Fuente de amor, ven hacia mí, y al corazón cántale su compasión. Soba volar, subiendo mar, hasta moldear la justicia de la vida. Arriádame, libérame, fuente de amor, ven a mí, ven a mí.
Our reading today is What You Missed That Day You Were Absent from Fourth Grade by Brad Aaron Modlin. Mrs. Nelson explained how to stand still and listen to the wind. How to find meaning in pumping gas. How peeling potatoes can be a form of prayer. She took questions on how not to feel lost in the dark. And after lunch, she distributed worksheets that covered ways to remember your grandfather's voice. Then the class discussed falling asleep without feeling that you had forgotten to do something important, and how to believe that the house that you wake up in is your own home. This prompted Mrs. Nelson to draw a chalkboard diagram detailing how to chant the palms during a cigarette break, and how not to squirm for sound when your own thoughts are all you hear. Also, that you have enough. The English lesson was that I am is a complete sentence. And just before the afternoon bell, she made a math equation look easy. That one that proves that hundreds of questions and feeling cold and all those nights spent looking for whatever it was you lost and one person add up to something.
As we enter into this sacred time of silent reflection, I invite us to get comfortable in our seat, close our eyes, and take a few nice deep breaths together. We follow the empty breath. As we breathe, we let go of the concerns and thoughts of the day, of the week behind us or the week ahead of us, the year behind us or the year ahead of us. And we allow ourselves to breathe into this moment. Now, in stillness, we breathe into that place beneath such concerns where we can remember that as we all sit together in silence, we are at the very center of our being, of the same essence, cut from the same cloth, yearning for the same peace, the same joy, carrying the same sorrows, sitting together in silence.
Give up the fight for some other moment, some other life than here and now.
I'm just gonna breathe.
Give up the longing for some other world, the wishing for other choices to make, other songs to sing, other bodies, other ages, other countries, other stakes.
Till I touch the sorrow neath the rage. I'm just gonna breathe.
Purge the past. Forgive the future. For each comes too soon. Surrender only to this life, this one, this moment here and now. Surrender only to this day, this hour, this breath. Not because it does not constantly break your heart, but because it too beckons with beauty, startles with delight. If only we can keep waking up to this gift. This is the gift we have been given. these body clothes. This heartbreak, it's ours. This pulse, it's ours. This breath, this light, these friends, this hope. All we can do is remember ourselves here.
I'm just gonna breathe.
All a part of it all. Still growing together.
I'm just gonna breathe. Until I'm glad to breathe here for a while. We'll give up the thought for some other love. Just hope in the way that you are living. We'll give up the thought for some other love. It's changing, no longer resisting. Come on and breathe, breathe, breathe. Come on and breathe, breathe, breathe. It's gonna breathe, breathe, breathe. Come on and breathe, breathe, breathe. Give up the fight, breathe, breathe. For some other life, breathe, breathe. Give up the fight, breathe, breathe. For some other life, breathe, breathe. I'm just gonna breathe.
Good morning. I have been running away from failure ever since I was first aware there was such a thing as a report card. I couldn't imagine anything worse than getting an F, the humiliation, the disgrace. I lived through my school years actually believing that my grade point average and my self-worth were one and the same thing. Even though ultimately a 4.0 GPA was flimsy proof indeed of any kind of self-worth, still, a string of A's did offer some momentary consolation and camouflage, if you will, for my true failure as a boy, as a straight boy, doing straight boy things, not like the other boys at all. How many of us still live our lives as if there will be a report card at the end? If that somehow we'll be judged ultimately on how meaningful our life was, our work was, how many things we acquired, how much money we made, how productive were we, what kind of a parent were we? Or conversely, living with the bone-chilling fear that I must have been absent that day, unaware that this particular moral challenge would be on the final exam, and I blew it. Sharon is facing the end of her life, ovarian cancer, and she struggles with that very fear. Michael, I've lived a pretty decent life, and I think I'm a good person, but I have made my mistakes, big ones, and I have my regrets. What if I don't get into heaven? As if she will be judged on her resume and not on, say, the love that's in her heart, if she's even to be judged at all. My grandmother, Barbara, my dad's mom, was one tough cookie. So tough, in fact, that her standard reply to the greeting, "How are you?" was, "I'm just as mean as usual." I don't believe in failure, she would say. There's no such thing because you can always learn something. It's a pretty common perception, particularly among those given to positive thinking as a way of negotiating life, and certainly within the mythos of American notions of success. But what I found lacking in my grandmother's declaration was compassion. If I were brokenhearted that I didn't get the thing I wanted more than anything else, devastated really after I worked so hard to get it, I really didn't want to hear, "Well, I'm not going to feel sorry for you because you're going to learn through this." That wasn't helpful at all in the moment, even if it proved to be true in time. Compassion, after all, only means to be with suffering, to be with it. Not to fix it, not to correct it, not to advise it or compare it. It's not a small or easy thing. Authentic compassion for ourselves and each other might just be the one true great healer. And yet it's not a quality I've ever seen on any report card or any measuring stick for success. And at the same time, I resonate deeply with the writings of Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl. In the end, everything can be taken from a man, but this one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. So yes, maybe it really is up to us to cast the final grade, to call it a success or a failure, to pass that final verdict. I find that I struggle, though, with this human urge to cast any verdict at all, to look through this dualistic lens of win and lose, success and failure. What if it's not so simple as that, so clear-cut as that? In the early 90s, a big economic downturn had hit Los Angeles. I had a design business at the time, and business fell off to zero. I needed to do something quick. As a stopgap survival strategy, I took the CBEST test, I got an emergency teaching credential, and I was hired to be a substitute school teacher for Inglewood Unified School District. This was a few weeks after the Rodney King uprisings in Los Angeles. It seemed like a good idea at the time, but soon enough, I discovered I did not have the constitution to face those schools every day. So on my off days, I volunteered at Project Angel Food, delivering home-cooked meals to homebound people with AIDS. These were the peak years of the AIDS crisis before the drug cocktails came in. I also got involved with a fledgling volunteer AIDS hospice group called Project Nightlight. But at the time, I felt like a complete loser, a total abject failure. No one could convince me otherwise. I assiduously avoided friends who might call me, dare to ask the unthinkable question, so what are you doing these days? What's more, I felt like a spiritual failure, as if God had dispensed all the components to live a successful life to everyone else except me, firmly attached to that idea. And yet now when I look back on that point in time, I see it as the pivot point that pointed me in this direction of chaplaincy, this career that I love so much, that gives my life so much meaning, that holds the door open for me to make sense of it all, though it took so many years to materialize. So am I to look back on that point in time now, call it a success, a blessing, hurting so badly that I wanted to die? Spiritual success, spiritual failure, these are tricky concepts, confusing. The older I get, the more I chafe at such notions, this either or kind of thinking. In the world of cancer, the stakes are much higher when it comes to our conceptions of success and failure. If this diagnosis means the imminent end of my physical body, does that then mean that Western medicine failed, my doctor failed, this drug trial failed, my positive affirmations failed, my vegan diet failed, my acupuncturist failed, my prayers failed, God failed me, I failed God? These experiences of failure are not just the province of patients. Over the years of walking beside countless folks who have been left behind, the bereaved, they too almost universally struggle with some sense of failure. If I hadn't spent so much time at work, I could have taken better care of her. She might still be here. If it weren't for my anxiety and depression, I know I caused her so much distress. I'm sure that's why the cancer came back. It's my fault. If I had just insisted that he go to the doctor sooner, if we had just gone to get a second opinion, he might still be here. It's my fault. The thing about needing to cast a verdict one way or the other, from what I observe, seldom is there room for the verdict to be not guilty. Deanna has been living with an aggressive colon cancer. She's also deeply rooted in this new age sort of philosophy that would suggest that she can create her reality just as she envisions it through positive thinking and prayer and affirmation. Up until now, that system has worked rather well for her. She's a planner. She likes to set goals with measurable outcomes. So each win only solidifies her faith that much more, deepens it. How could it be otherwise? But now the tables have turned. Her disease has progressed and her prognosis is not so good. This whole paradigm of setting goals becomes far trickier, far more complicated, even murky. If cure is medically off the table, what possible goal can she set? What can she hope for? Just more time living with chronic cancer. What's more, she feels like a spiritual failure. I guess, Michael, my faith wasn't strong enough. My prayers weren't powerful enough. It's my fault. Over 20 years ago, I was covering an overnight on-call shift at the hospital. It was late that Sunday night, and I was paged to come up to the ICU because there was an elderly woman there, the matriarch of a large African-American family who was very near death. The family wanted some support and maybe a prayer. I offered them that and I left. A couple hours later, I was paged to return to the ICU because the woman had passed. The family now just wanted some company while they waited for their family pastor to arrive. Once he arrived, he took one look at the scene and said, "It looks like you all didn't pray hard enough." As if it were this loving family's fault for their mother's death, as if death itself were a failure. And if that's true, all of us are guaranteed an F on our final report card. As I say, spiritual success, spiritual failure, tricky concepts. Again, this either or kind of thinking. Over the years, I've walked beside countless folks, many religious, some with no religion at all, but with a common yearning and longing for a stronger belief, a stronger faith. When we tease apart what they really mean by that, what does strong faith look like? It usually means certainty. I want to know that I'm going to be okay. I want to know that this chemo is going to work, that I'm going to be fine, that God has my back. The German-American theologian Paul Tillich says the opposite of faith isn't doubt, it's certainty. If I'm living in certainty, I'm not really in the realm of faith anymore, am I? Faith might better be described as a willingness to step off into the unknown with my fears and doubts in tow and continuing to walk anyway. With my eyes and heart open, with curiosity, with patience, with humility, and with compassion. With Deanna, who loved to set goals, we looked at what another kind of goal might be, a goal with a not so measurable outcome. What about a goal of coming to peace with uncertainty, coming to peace with doubt, with powerlessness, with loss? It's a whole other kind of goal. In this time of COVID and all of these extreme measures with which we have had to live as we attempt to address and contain this pandemic, there are those among us, myself included, who have sought to somehow reframe, redefine our notions of spiritual success. A whole new report card, if you will. The times seem to demand it. And I find there are those eternally optimistic spiritual folks who liken this time to a golden opportunity, a chance to hit the reset button for life on planet Earth, to refine and distill, release all of the extremities of life and distill down to its very essence what's important. And they greet this with warm embrace. Not me. I grieve. I have never come to realize how much of an extrovert I am. That for me, real human physical contact in real time and space is like oxygen for me. That connection, that connectedness is the stuff of life, maybe even comes close to the meaning of life itself. And so it is for me, something like sitting in a darkened, sold-out theater, knee to knee with a bunch of strangers being moved to tears or laughter by the same humanity on the stage becomes a sacred rite, a ritual. Just as it is for me to sweat with my chums on Saturday afternoon in the same dance class, in the same dance studio, in front of the same mirror, dancing to the same music, and afterward getting to enjoy Holy Communion of complaining how much everything hurts. just as it is for me to be able to travel to some faraway land and get lost in some alleyway among a bunch of locals, many of whom may never have even heard of Los Angeles. Just as it is to hug someone, a patient, a friend, a stranger. These experiences are so meaningful to me that it has seemed, when at times, like they are off the table for the foreseeable future, or maybe even for the rest of my life, I'm embarrassed to say that a part of me wonders whether life is even worth it. Not like those spiritually optimistic folks at all who embrace that. And so at those times, I give myself an F and I feel like a spiritual failure. By contrast, Bernadette, 31 years old, she meets life with the most profound sense of curiosity, acceptance, and humor. This curiosity that seems to supersede the anxieties that accompany most every cancer patient. She lives in the world of, gee, I wonder what that would be like. So when she began her chemotherapy after diagnosis and her beautiful red hair began to fall out, we had that conversation I often have with women and men when they face this crucible. Some will shave their heads preemptively as a self-empowering gesture. Some might dye their hair green, invite friends over, and have a shaving party as a lighthearted ritual. No, she said, I think it'd be really interesting just to see what it would be like to have your hair fall out. Once she finished her treatment and that year had come to a close, we were reflecting back on the year, and Bernadette said, you know, Michael, when I think back on it, all in all, this was a pretty good year. Bernadette, in a year that included a cancer diagnosis, chemotherapy, a radical double mastectomy, radiation, if that makes a good year, what on earth would make a bad one? Oh, I don't know. Losing my sense of humor, I guess. A spirit like that cannot be broken. I walked beside Grace over the last 6 years of her life, living with metastatic breast cancer. Grace had lived a life of dizzying twists and turns, both personally and professionally, zigzagging her way across the country. I asked her, Grace, if you had a grandchild or a young person came to you and said, what piece of advice do you have for me after living a life like the one you've lived? She didn't take much time at all to answer. When the time comes, be ready to go, she said. She actually echoes Joseph Campbell in describing the hero's journey. In order to be a hero, you must be prepared for when the time comes. Donna and Lois have shared the last 48 years of their lives together in their late 70s, early 80s, so devoted to one another, so at ease with each other. A family. They've created a family in a society that is absolutely hostile to two women calling themselves a family. Over the last 8 years, Lois has been living with ovarian cancer. And as her disease progressed, she decided to take advantage of aid in dying medication for when the time came. She's a vibrant, no-nonsense gal who'd much rather hear what you have to say than tell her story one more time. It was hard to know sometimes just how much suffering she was in because she carried her pain with this kind of gracious stride. Though thoroughly contemporary, knows her way around a computer, she was also steeped in old school values like letter writing and sending thank you notes. One Saturday night, she told Donna, honey, I think this is it. And I think I need to take the medication tomorrow. Well, honey, if you're suffering so badly, why not take it tonight? I can't. I've got too many things to do. What do you have to do that's so important? I've got some bills to pay and some birthday cards to send and a couple of thank you notes to write. I'll help you do that. So on the last night of her life, after nearly 80 years on planet Earth, she spent it around the dining table with her beloved Donna, engaged in the most mundane activities. but activities that are nevertheless rooted in connectedness, in kindness, in consideration. That is a picture of spiritual success in my book. The next morning, she got up and put on her best red silk pajamas. I guess I might as well go out in style, she said. If there is such a thing as a spiritual report card, I give them both an A+. Just as I would to Bernadette for that astounding capacity for curiosity and humor and acceptance, as I would to Grace for her astonishing ability to adapt, to ride this wave of life. Spiritual success, strong faith, without a shred of certainty inside. I'm a big documentary film fan. I remember in 1995, a wonderful Oscar-nominated documentary called Troublesome Creek. It's the story of a family farm in Iowa that had been in the family for generations, over 125 years. Russell and Mary continue to work the farm, though they're getting much older now, having raised their kids. The kids have all moved away. But the farm now faces foreclosure because of a farming crisis. And now it's all hands on deck. All the kids return to Iowa to do what they can to save the family farm. We're given to believe it will kill Russell and Mary if they lose the farm and have to move to town. So you're kind of dying a little bit as you watch them auction off the farm equipment and the livestock and their furniture. You see Mary caressing her Ethan Allen dining table. Oh, the Thanksgiving dinners I've served at this table. Sold. They can't lose the farm, but they do. And to everyone's shock and amazement, Russell and Mary thrive. Russell becomes a new man, unencumbered by all of this backbreaking labor and nonstop worry. He's one of those guys that had those wild, untamed, bushy eyebrows that go every direction. You wonder, what's up with that, Russell? And there he is in the barbershop getting them all trimmed up. Looking his best. I'll never forget the last line of the film. Their daughter Jean is narrating success and failure. Sometimes it's hard to tell which is which. Yes, it is. So be it. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Your words are such a blessing. Please join me, everyone, in singing Glory, Glory, Hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah, since I laid my burden down. Glory, glory, hallelujah, since I laid my burden down. Feel like shouting, hallelujah, since I laid my burden down. Feel like shouting, hallelujah, since I laid my burden down. Life is sweeter, so much sweeter, since I laid my burden down. Life is sweeter, so much sweeter, since I laid my burden down. Feel like dancing, hallelujah, since I laid my burden down. Feel like dancing, hallelujah, since I laid my burden down. Love is shining all around me, since I laid my burden down. Love is shining all around me, since I laid my burden down.
Please join me in reading the words on your screen, then join me in extinguishing the candle. your chalices at home. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. Those we carry into our lives until we meet again. After the postlude, everyone will be invited into breakout rooms for a virtual coffee hour. Michael Esselun will remain in our Zoom sanctuary for anyone who would like to speak with him. Our mid-year budget review will begin at 11:30 in the Zoom sanctuary. If you join a breakout room, they'll be closed so that you can join the meeting. Or if you'd like, stay connected in the Zoom sanctuary, take a short break, and come back at 11:30 for mid-year review.
I invite us all to close our eyes and maybe take a few nice deep breaths together. We might imagine that we can take hands with one another in a great circle. And as we do, we feel the energy that passes between us and connects us in the family of things. In that place, might we remember to hang on to one another, to that connection, and loosen our grip just a bit on our need for things to be one thing or the other, our desire to cast a verdict, to call it a success or a failure, to write a final report card. In this place, may we all be allowed to be who we are, as we are, where we are, with grace, with compassion. So be it.